I'm with Matthew Barnes, who's a partner with Open Doors. Now, Matthew, what is Open Doors?
Open Doors is an international Christian organization that tries to strengthen the church in countries where the church is under pressure. So that countries like Syria, Iraq, but also some of the Asian and African countries where churches are under pressure because of persecution or discrimination, that kind of thing.
And it's important to share with the world what's actually going on for the Christian community around the world, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. Because we try to raise, in the first place, prayer support for the international church, but also, of course, support for projects that support the churches that are under pressure or under persecution.
Now, we're seeing trouble in Syria at the moment. What is happening there?
Since the regime fell in December 24, so about 3 months ago, there's a new regime in place that has roots in Al-Qaeda. And in the first place, the country is in a transitional period, let's say it like that. And that makes it very vulnerable. So there has been quite some violence 1.5 weeks ago in the coastal area of Syria. But there's also a lot of uncertainty of all the people of what's going to happen. And right now, with lack of police on the streets, with the lack of general security, many people are scared, including the Christians and other minorities.
Now, you've just recently been to Syria. When did you go and how long were you there for?
I was there more or less a week, and I returned about a week ago.
And what were you doing there?
I visited several places like Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo, connected with Christians over there to listen to their story, to hear what their need is right now in the current situation. And in general, you can say the Christians, like the other Syrians, they are on one hand happy, optimistic, because the regime is gone, the regime that they knew for more than 50 years, the regime that was dictatorial and in a way made the country less free. You were not able to speak on the streets about politics because people could listen in, you could be arrested and that kind of stuff. So in that sense, people are optimistic. A new era started. On the other hand, there's this being scared for those Islamists that now took power. In their speaking, they're positive. They say they want an inclusive Syria, but will that really happen? That's a little bit a question.
What are the Christian community saying to you? Is there a lot of fear there? We've heard that there's been a massacre. So did you speak to anyone who'd been involved in that massacre?
Oh, the massacre, just to clarify, there have been reports in the media that there was a massacre on Christians and Alawites. The first part is not true. There was a massacre on Alawites. Alawites belong to the group where also the former president belonged to. And a small group of them, they attacked 1.5 weeks ago some of the new regime soldiers, killing them. And then the new government, they sent reinforcements to that region. And part of those groups there, they started to massacre Alawites. So there has been no massacre of Christians. Weren't there Christians killed? Yes. There were 5 Christians killed, as far as we know. Not as far as we heard out of the stories, because they were Christians, but just being in the wrong spot at the wrong moment. So in that sense, the reports are not true. But still, massacring so many people shocked the whole nation, of course, and it's caused, again, fear in the hearts of many Christians also. Can we be the next ones, for example? They don't expect it, but the fear is there.
Yeah, it must be a very worrying time when, it was difficult before, but now that fundamental Islam has taken over, it must be a very difficult time and worrying time for the Christian community there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Although, what I said, the government is speaking an inclusive language. They say that there should be place for all the minorities in the country too, also in the future. But they just presented a kind of draft of a new constitution this week. And there it states that the main source of legislation in Syria will be Sharia law. So that's an indication that the country will move towards a little bit more Islamic style of country, more than it was before. And we see it also already happening in the country where, for example, schools in villages in Aleppo province, they force girls now to wear a veil. We heard of gyms where people go for sports. They were always mixed, and now a number of them, they decided to have separate spaces for girls and men. The University of Aleppo, we heard that the entrance, the students always entered through the same door, but now they have separate doors for the girls and for the men. These are small changes, but they could be an indication of something.
How big is the Christian community in Syria?
It has diminished a lot. Right now, there are about 575,000 Christians left in Syria. Before the war started in 2011, there were 1.7, 1.8 million Christians in the country. So it has diminished quite a bit because of all the violence, all the issues the country has been through.
Are these Christians leaving the country because of the war and because of the danger of death, or is it because of persecution?
For all reasons. Part of them left in the period when ISIS came up and they saw all the atrocities of ISIS also towards Christians. So they were totally scared and left the country. Part of them left, mainly young men, because they didn't want to join the army. All the young men have to join the Syrian army, and in that period they didn't want it. And also the economic situation. The economy collapsed in Syria because of the war and the international boycott. So there was no future for people. So not only Christians left, also many others left the country during all those years.
How were Christians treated before the collapse of Syria?
They were treated okay, let's say it like that. They were quite free to worship. They could have their masses, their church services. Churches were recognized by the government. The only thing, they were not really allowed to preach the gospel to non-Christians. There was also a movement of believers who converted from a Muslim background to Christianity. They were facing more challenges, but specifically from the people around, from their communities, from their families, not in the first place from government. So they were quite tolerated under the past regime, and now it seems that will continue. That's the impression that we get out of the words of the new rulers of the country. Of course, we need to see it in the future, but we hope that, like in other countries where Sharia law is the main source of legislation, that the church can survive even in those circumstances.
Now, you're in Holland. Why did you want to go to Syria in the first place? It sounds a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah, because I'm part of this organization. I wanted to see the Christians myself. I wanted to see also the changes in the country. And to be honest, it really changed. I've been there many more times during the past regime. And you can see the difference. You can see that as a foreigner, you're not followed, you're not watched, you're not bothered in the streets by the secret police, for example. The churches also are not bothered by the secret police because I came to visit them. So that kind of changes, they are, of course, nice. You also feel it in the streets when you talk with the people, even about the new situation, about the new government. The people they're not fearful to talk about politics. That was in the past different. At that time, they couldn't. Now they just openly do, whether you're in a hotel, in a church, in the street, wherever you are, they just talk. So that's a wonderful change.
What do you do to actually help and support the people of Syria?
Now, we work through partners. What we do is we offer training to Christians over there, training in, for example, discipleship, in leadership, but also we invest in income generating projects for people who have no means to financially survive in the country. So we invest in small micro businesses for people. Sometimes we help with relief when people really are needy and not having the resources to buy enough food or medicine. We try to come alongside with them. But in the first place, also, we make the church worldwide pray for their brothers and sisters in Syria, because they should not feel left alone. And that's sometimes a good thing that we hear back from church leaders. They say, indeed, during the past years, the world has been praying for us, and we did not feel left alone in our suffering. I think that's a very important thing.
Can Christians survive the Middle East today? There seems to be a lot of problems in the Middle East.
There's a general fear in Iraq, in Syria, also in the Palestinian areas, that the church might disappear. Personally, I don't think that will happen. I believe that God is stronger than whatever happens in countries, and he won't let his church completely disappear. But yeah, as we've seen in the past decades, the church has become smaller and smaller in those countries. And yeah, the trend is not stopped yet.
Of course, Syria is actually mentioned in the Bible a number of times. So it's important to pray for the Christian church there, because they're actually, for all the Christian places that are there.
Yeah, indeed. When you see the role of Syria, even in the Bible, Paul was on his way to Damascus, and there he encountered Jesus. There he converted. There in Syria, for the first time, Christians were named Christians. Before that, they were not known as Christians. That kind of things. Syria has a long history with Christianity. The church was there from the early start of Christianity. So it should be seen as part of the country and not as something foreign or so.
How can we pray for the Christian community in Syria today?
Now, in the first place, that they will have hope for indeed a better future, hope that the Lord will help and protect them, and that indeed the new government, as they promised, that they will give voice to the Christians also when they really write the final constitution, when they think of the future of the country, that it will indeed be an inclusive country where the light and the salt of the Christians will be part of this future Syria.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Yeah, just go to Google and search for Open Doors, and you will find much more information about what we do.
Well, Matthew, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.